Good morning, everybody. Why don't we stand together? Arise, my soul, remember this. He took my sin and he buried it. No longer I who live, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. Let's put our hands together. No, I won't boast, but in the cross that saved my soul. All else is lost. The grip of fear has no hold on me. So where, oh death, where is your sting? Sing it out. No longer I who lives, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. Hey! To see the light. I woke up to see the light. Let's sing this together, all for your glory. All of this for your glory. Let's put our hands together. And all of this for your glory. Let's try a little higher. And all of this for your glory. And all of this for your glory. One more time, even higher. And all of this for your glory. And all of this for your glory. No longer I who live, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. 1, 2, 3. To see the light. I woke up to see your light. Jesus, all for your glory. All of this for your glory. Yeah. All of this for your glory. Yeah. We sing, all of this for your glory. Yeah. All of this for your glory. Yeah. For your glory, Lord. Come on, lift up a shout of praise. Thank you, Jesus. Well, good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you to the Park Church. So glad to see you today. We're going to spend some time in worship, and I just encourage you this morning, whatever you're walking into this place with that's maybe taking up space in your mind or your heart, there's an invitation for us just to lay those things down at the feet of Jesus this morning. And we can say, not now, I've got something more important to do. And I think when we put our focus and our attention on Jesus and his face, that he's going to do a work in us. The Bible says that his mercies are new every morning. Do you believe that? And so as we sing and as we worship, let's ask God to just experience those mercies, and let's just spend some time with him beyond singing, but worshiping him. So yeah, let's sing and let's worship together. Let's put our hands together.
singing like I'm walking on water. You are life alive in me.
You have that light this morning? Make a joyful noise. Come on, let's sing this together. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. Sing, it's your breath. And it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Just tell him this morning, great are you, Lord. And oh, great are you, Lord. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Oh, great are you, Lord. Come on, we sing. And it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Oh, great are you, Lord.
Great are you, Lord.
Oh, great are you, Lord. So come on, church, let's sing it with everything we've got this morning. And all the earth will shout your praise.
Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you,
And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. If you're comfortable, let's lift our hands to heaven tonight and sing this morning. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, shout your praise. Our hearts
will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you,
Just tell him this morning, lift up your praise to him. It's your breath, and it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. You're worthy of our praise. Yeah, let's give him praise, church. Come on, don't hold back. Yeah. You're worthy. Worthy of my song. Worthy of my praise. Yeah, there's something powerful that happens when we make the choice to push past what we're feeling and bring a sacrifice of praise. We talk about this as a worship team all the time, but you rarely see praise and worship in the Bible without some sort of sacrifice. And that looks different for each of us coming into this place, but when we're able to bring that, we're able to sacrifice our time, our effort, our comfort zone, and push through, God honors that. And he's here with us this morning. Let's keep singing. Let's sing this together.
I was a wretch. I remember who I was. I was lost. I was blind. I was running out of time. Sin separated. The breach was far too wide. But from the far side of the chasm, you held me in your side. So you made a way across the great divide, left behind heaven's throne to build it here inside. There at the cross, you paid the debt I owed, broke my chains, freed my soul. For the first time I had hope. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood applied. Thank you, Jesus, it has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life, brought me from the darkness into glorious light.
You know, I just sense the presence of God so strongly here this morning with us. And appropriate for us in the midst of this song to take time and reflect on the gift and the sacrifice of Jesus. And so you should have received when you came in emblems of his broken body and shed blood. And so I ask you to get those out now. And as we conclude with communion, we're going to have a time to receive you for for prayer. If you'd like to receive prayer, to be anointed with oil and prayed for. So I'm asking just our staff and our board and their spouses, if they're able to come down to the front here as we are preparing to pray together. You know, in John chapter 6, Jesus makes this declaration. He says, "I'm the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never go thirsty." He says, "Your ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, yet they died. But here is the bread that comes down from heaven, which anyone may eat and not die." Speaks to Jesus' invitation that whosoever will may come. That Jesus came that we might receive. He says, anybody who eats this bread will not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. It's what we remember this morning, that you hold in your hand. So as we receive it together, let us receive it with thanksgiving. Jesus, the living bread, come down from heaven, given for us. Let's receive it now. Thank you. He continues on teaching them, saying, "Very truly, I tell you that unless you eat my flesh, the flesh of the Son of Man, and drink his blood, you have no life in you. And whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day." We're remembering a covenant that Jesus is the mediator of. And Hebrews tells us that it's a better covenant. Hebrews tells us that Jesus' blood speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Jesus' blood that speaks of forgiveness. Jesus' blood that speaks of redemption. Jesus' blood that speaks of mercy and grace. Jesus' blood that speaks of healing. Jesus' blood that speaks of wholeness. Jesus' blood that speaks of sacrifice. Jesus' blood that leads us to worship. So we want to receive it this morning, just in awe of how great a sacrifice it is. Let's receive it together. Father, we just stand in amazement this morning. Lord, of the great gift of your Son, in whom we have eternal life. Jesus, your life given for the life of the world. Jesus, that we might trade our sins for a robe of righteousness. As we sang that you washed us white, you cleansed us. And Lord, for as many who are here, Lord, that just need a fresh cleansing and a fresh reminder. For Lord, as we receive it, God, we receive your life and we receive your promise. We renew our allegiance and we renew our faithfulness, God, for you who never leaves us or forsakes us. We place our confidence in your gift this morning. We just take this moment to express gratitude that he who has been forgiven much loves much. Why don't you just tell him in your own words this morning, church, how much you love him. Jesus, we love you. Jesus, we honor you. Jesus, we thank you. Thank you, Jesus. We're going to continue singing that chorus and the verses, but we want to invite you, if you want to be prayed for, the board is going to be here and they'll come and just anoint you with oil. So the rest of you can worship and pray, or if somebody here and you know their situation, you want to just come and lay a hand on their shoulder and pray with them, agree with those that are praying. We invite you to do that as well. We're a family here. It's a family church, and we just invite you to come and support and pray with your family as we sing.
You took my place, laid inside my tomb of sin. You were buried for 3 days, but then you rocked right out again. And now death has no sting, and life has no end. For I have been transformed by the blood of the Lamb. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood applied. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. It has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus. You have saved my life. Brought me from the darkness into glorious light. There is nothing stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. The blood that calls us sons and daughters. We are ransomed by the Father through the blood. The blood. There is nothing stronger than the wonder-working power of the blood. The blood that calls us sons and daughters. We are ransomed by the Father through the blood. The blood. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood applied. Thank you, Jesus, you have washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life. Glory to His name. Glory to His name.
Just lift your voice and sing.
There to my heart was the blood applied. Glory to His name.
Sing that again. Glory.
Glory to His name.
Lift your voice and sing.
Glory to His name.
Oh, there
To my heart was the blood applied. Glory to His name.
oh, we sing glory.
Glory to His name.
Glory to your name. Jesus, we just thank you for this time in your presence. God, open our hearts and our minds just to hear what you want to say to us today. Holy Spirit, have your way in this place. We just lay down our defenses, our walls, our barriers that we set up, God. We invite you to come and do a transformative work in our hearts, Jesus. We love you. Just thank you for this time in your presence, Jesus. You're worthy, and we love you. pray this in your name, Jesus. Everybody said? Amen. You guys can be seated.
All right. Well, good morning, Park Church. My name is Pastor Shea, and I am the Discipleship Community Care Pastor here at the church, and it's good to be here. You know, as we were just worshiping and taking communion and praying for one another, that's what it's all about. We are a spiritual community. We are a family. We love each other, and we do life together. Amen? Awesome. I just want to reach out to our online family as well, just acknowledging your presence. Wherever you are, I pray the Lord meets you and blesses you, and I just pray you have a great day. If you are visiting with us today for the first time, I'm looking out and I'm seeing some faces. And it's good. I'm glad you're here if you're visiting with us. And I want you to do something for me. I'd like you to text the following number, 587-600-1905. It's on the screen behind me. And what that'll do, if you text welcome to that, that'll send me an email, and then I have your number, and I can reach out to you and answer any questions you may have about the church. We have a lot going on here at the Park Church. There's something for every age demographic and a lot of things coming this fall. So I just want to answer any questions you may have and get you connected, get you plugged in, and get to know you and your spouse and maybe your kids or something like that. If you don't have a cell phone, I had somebody tell me this last week. They said, you know, are people without cell phones not welcome? Of course you're welcome. And you know who you are. But you can look in the seat in front of you. There's a little pouch, and there's a paper card there. You can fill out your name and your number and your information on that. And then at the back of the church, at every exit, there are little boxes. We don't take up an offering here. We just ask that if you have an offering, you can drop it in those boxes. And you can do that with that card that I talked about. Fold it in half, drop it in the box at the back, and then I'll reach out to you. And I usually do it on Mondays. So don't ghost me. If you give me your info, I'm coming after you. All right. A couple of announcements today. Tomorrow is a big week. We're having an art camp here at the church. This is something we do annually. And we've got 50 kids coming for the week. And Pastor Kayla and her team and some great servants, volunteers, and professional artists are going to be pouring into these kids, teaching them new things. It's going to be a great week. And I would just ask that you would be praying into that. If you're not volunteering with it, that's okay, but pray for it. Pray that the kids would just have a great time, there'd be no injuries, they'd learn some skills, and most importantly, that they would just hear the devotional messages and stuff that are being preached. We always pray for transformed kids. Also, fall is coming, like I said, and we've got a lot of stuff happening. We'll be talking about that in the weeks to come. Lots of groups, lots of ministries, something for every age demographic. Be thinking about how you can get involved. Maybe you want to lead something, maybe you just want to be involved. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And finally, long weekends. Long weekends, we like to have a lot of fellowship in the foyer, in the cafe. We call it Big Cafe. So every long weekend, stay extra long following the service because we want to get to know you. We want you to be a part of this church family. Amen? Have a great service. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Shea. Can I just say just this morning already, you know, I was just standing there worshiping and that and just thinking to myself, you know, what we get to do is not normal. It's not normal. For us to be here, to be gathered, to be singing, and to experience the very tangible, supernatural presence of Almighty God among us. You know, it's a privilege and it's a luxury. It's something that other believers around the world and many other countries would long for, this type of morning and experience. And so I just encourage you in those times to just really take it in and engage and let God really speak to you. Let the Holy Spirit take this corporate message of love and this corporate song of worship and let him make it very personal to you. It's a very personal thing. And so just so thankful for Pastor John and our worship team just leading us in that, the sensitivity to the Holy Spirit and his moving and trusting that God is touching your life. We don't always get to hear about it, what God is doing in your life and how he's healing you, restoring you, how he's building a great testimony of his faithfulness. We know he's doing it because he is faithful, but we just want to encourage you to really continue to seek him. Just a quick announcement from me. Many of you know Colton. He's one of the unsung heroes at the Park Church because he serves in the sound ministry and the lighting ministry and our tech ministry, and he's always on Sundays. He's up in the booth. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That's from The Wizard of Oz, all those young people that have never seen that. But Colton is finishing up. He's at King's University. He's finishing up his degree this coming year. And he handles not just our media and our Sunday tech, but he's also been a great asset in our young adults and in our youth ministry and in our 5-6 ministry as well. And he's been really taking a leadership role with our youth leadership team in the past number of months. But Colton will be finishing up his time with us here. He's just moving on to what God is calling him into and to put his hand to. And so next week is going to be his last Sunday, and we want to just, send him out with a great blessing and honor him for all that he's done. And so we'll have time to do that next week. And so we want to encourage you when you see him, just if you have words of honor, how he's touched your kids' lives or your grandkids' lives, I just encourage you to share those with him. Let's give him a great deposit to go into the next season of his life with, of the great impact he's made among us. So just want to, yeah, absolutely. He's up there blushing, I'll tell you that. Yeah. He's very, very, very much loved. Well, if you weren't convinced before, in the last number of weeks, or maybe even before we started this series, I hope that your eyes are being opened to the truth that we all need wisdom. We need wisdom. We need wisdom in every area of our lives. We need wisdom in how we walk. We need wisdom in how we talk to others. We need wisdom in how we spend our days working. And we need wisdom in how we love. We need to be wise in how we love. And Pastor Kayla did just a fantastic job last week with that, and so appreciated knowing that we have just a great staff to leave in your hands, and they care so much about you. No one can survive without wisdom. And you know what? The truth is, we've all seen it, that the unwise, those that take wisdom for granted and don't apply wisdom or seek wisdom, they encounter significant loss or consequence for their lack of action. And you know what? There's so many viral videos out there about that. Camera phones have really captured the folly of the unwise. Are you with me this morning? You're looking at me like you don't have any internet connection. We're living in Sherwood Park in 2022. I'm talking about the swimming with the sharks type of stuff. Okay, so maybe just free diving with the sharks. I'm talking about homemade ramps off of houses into swimming pools, kind of lack of wisdom. I'm talking about holding and shooting fireworks with your bare hands, kind of wisdom. Jumping a Tesla on the streets of Los Angeles, lack of wisdom. That happened. Anything that Johnny Knoxville or Steve-O are doing, lack of wisdom. And even lack of wisdom touches my very own family in that my sister-in-law had a very brief stint of internet fame when a few years ago at Christmas, my nephew received a hoverboard, and my sister-in-law wanted to try that out on the tile kitchen floor, and she not only broke the mirrored cabinet in the front entranceway, but her wrist a few times. And she made it on the viral videos that you see, just not being wise. I'm sorry, Vanessa, if you watch this. I just had to take advantage one more time of that fact. And so we're basing this series that we're in on proverbial wisdom on the writings of Solomon. He authored many proverbs. And he also authored the book of Ecclesiastes. And actually, Scripture tells us that Solomon wrote more proverbs that are even contained in the Scripture. I'm going to slow down because I can't even catch up. I'm just so excited. And 1 Kings 4:32 says that he spoke 3,000 proverbs and that his songs numbered 1,005. I don't know why we don't hear much about the songs of Solomon. Maybe we will. Nobody got that. That's just, if we need to teach the Old Testament around here. Songs of Solomon coming up in February. Good, okay, some of you got that reference. I'm happy. You know, Solomon's fame really came from his wisdom. The wisdom, we talked about that in the first week, that Solomon asked God for wisdom in governing his people, in being king. He asked for wisdom. And so people traveled from all over the world to hear Solomon express his wisdom. They came to see about the king to whom God had given such immense understanding and knowledge. And it wasn't just Solomon's great wisdom and discernment, was able to judge fairly and accurately. But Solomon knew everything. He knew about every type of science, math, everything. And we read that in 1 Kings 4, that his fame, so Solomon, he surpassed the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. And that Solomon spoke about trees, he spoke about reptiles, he knew about the cedars, he knew about all of these things. He just had so much wealth of wisdom to give. But then only second to Solomon's great knowledge, his extreme understanding, was his wealth. Really second to his wisdom. Solomon had surpassing wealth, as we read. His wealth surpassed all of the kings of the earth that God had bestowed upon him. So he possessed great wisdom and he possessed great wealth. And so it shouldn't surprise us then that Solomon wrote consistently about wealth. He wrote about the subject of wealth. And he did it not just in the book of Proverbs, but also in the book of Ecclesiastes. And the book of Ecclesiastes is considered as well to be, wisdom literature. And he talks at length about the vanity of life. The vanity of the toils of life, about making your life about acquiring riches and wealth. And it says that he denied himself no good thing. He was the richest man who ever lived, and so he could do the things that only others dreamed of doing. And he says that he denied himself nothing, and at the end of all of those exploits, and the end of all of that living, he said that it was just the chasing of the wind. It was like vapor. And the only thing that really mattered is fear of the Lord and obedience to his commandments. Because the truth is that no matter how much or how little you have, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. The story goes that there was an old man who was a miser all the days of his life. He was very, very stingy. And when the doctors told him that he was going to die, in preparation, he told his wife that he wanted to take his wealth with him. So he said, I want to take my wealth with me. So he put all of his money, all of his treasures into a box, and he had his wife put it in the attic. He says, I want to grab it on my way to heaven. So in the course of time, the miser died. And after the funeral, a few days later, the widow remembered this box of treasures that had been placed in the attic. And so she went up to the attic only to discover the box was still there and full. And so she cried out to herself, Lord, I knew I should have put it in the basement. You can't take it with you. Contained in the book of Proverbs is a very unique passage, a very unique prayer. It's maybe the only prayer that I'm aware of in the book of Proverbs. And we're going to take a look at it and consider it as we look at having wealth with wisdom. It's found in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7. And you can turn there in your Bible, or we'll have it up here on the screen or right below for you watching online. 2 things I ask of you, Lord, and do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I might have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God. I think this is a very wise prayer regarding wealth, but it's not likely one that is echoed by our society today. Because the people that we honor, the people that we want to be like, the people that we idolize are those that have great riches. I would say wealth, but we can't today talk about how each one of us is wealthy. Everyone, in Canada, comparatively, they live in the very top small percentage of people in the earth in terms of wealth. And so we idolize those that are rich, because I've yet to hear somebody say, I really just want to live paycheck to paycheck, and I'd really like to just have enough to get by and leave nothing at the end of my life. And it's debated not just in Christian circles, but in secular society. Is money or wealth good or bad? Is it good or bad? We've all heard that scripture verse, I don't have it for you here, that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And people even in the secular world, they understand that and they're aware of it. But we have this tension similarly in Christian circles. Many Christians feel conflicted. Some fear wealth, feeling that the way to godliness is cutting oneself off from worldly concerns, even and especially financial ones. Some fear that wealth is only an illusion and only the immaterial matters. And yet there are others that feel like riches are a sign of favor and blessing from God. And so if we aren't rich, either we don't have enough faith or God is cruelly withholding what is good. And so many find themselves stuck between these two extremes. But the book of Proverbs has much wisdom for us regarding wealth. Has a lot that we should practically learn and apply. God didn't leave us without direction about something that can become all-consuming in our lives. So one of the cautions of the book of Proverbs is that wealth is deceitful. It's very quiet in here this morning. You're like, oh, shoot, he talked about money. Good thing I left my wallet in the car. We're talking about wealth. And we're going to define that a little bit more clearly. Proverbs 11:4 says, wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. It can seem that in the time that we have in life, you maybe start your career in your 20s or maybe a bit later, and you work right up into your 60s or maybe your 70s. That it consumes a large portion of your time and of your life, and so it can seem like it's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, as the miser found out, you cannot take even a cent or a penny of it with you. Proverbs 18:11 says, the wealth of the rich is their fortified city, that they imagine it a wall too high to scale. For some, security is found in how much they have in the bank account, how much their stocks are worth, how much their portfolio is valued at. They have this sense that no matter what else happens, this is my safety net. This is some protection for me, just like the walls around a city, but this too is fragile. And we know that Jesus taught this, and he said, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth. They're volatile. Either moth and rust can decay them. Robbers can break in and steal them. Vermin may destroy them. So there is no security in wealth. And finally, the deceitfulness of wealth as well is evident by those around us. Proverbs 19:4, wealth attracts many friends, but even the closest friend of the poor deserts them. You ever notice that these lottery winners at times, they just really tell the story that as soon as people found out that they had great sums of money, that they had cousins that they didn't know they had. They had best friends from elementary school that turned up after 20 or 30 years to touch base and reconnect. They had friends with great business ideas and investments, opportunities. But are those the kind of friends that we want, the kind of friends that are attracted to wealth? Are those the kind of friends, like Pastor Kayla said last week, that stick closer than a brother? Freddie Mercury was the lead singer of Queen. And he said, you can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man. And that's the most bitter type of loneliness. He says that success brought me world idolization and millions of pounds, but it prevented me from having the one thing we all need, a loving, ongoing relationship. Wealth is deceiving. And wealth itself can lead you astray. And I believe that's why the author of this proverb says, I don't want to have too much. I don't want to have too many riches because I'm worried or I'm fearful that when I get to that place of comfort, when I get to that place of excess, I'm going to live in a way that denies that God exists. I'm going to start living in a way that denies that there is one Lord of my life and it is not the person I see in the mirror. And you know, the Israelites were given a very similar command when they were going into the promised land. You know, they were going into a place of rest and safety. God was going to deliver them from all their enemies. He was going to really jet out all of the inhabitants of the land. And they were cautioned. They said, be careful. Be careful when you go into the land that you're going to possess. Be careful when you enjoy vineyards that you didn't plant and wells that you didn't dig. Be careful that you do not deny God and forget that you were slaves in Egypt. The laziness or the apathy that comes with wealth. And so we know that riches can be a trap, but also poverty can be a trap. Scarcity has its danger as well. And it's not just for things like jealousy or coveting or dishonesty or stealing to survive or to get ahead. Those are all really grave sins and cautions that we should have. But the greatest trap is the attempt to appear wealthier than we may be. The attempt to appear wealthier than we may be. And actually in Alberta, we have the highest household consumer debt in the nation. $25,000 is what it's estimated. It's highest in the nation is what consumer debt is. And Proverbs warns us about debt. Proverbs 22:7 says that the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. And so some of you know what it's like to be enslaved to debt or to be held captive by debt, consumed by it. And so that's why we regularly offer financial coaching to help people conquer and overcome the burden and load of debt. Billy Graham said that part of our problem with debt is that we've confused needs and wants. That yesterday's luxuries are today's necessities. And so we need to use wisdom. So wisdom speaks to beware of wants and needs, to strive to live within your means. And this is all very practical wisdom. It's practical teaching. It's something that we can't avoid talking about because maybe we feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's important. Debt trades what we want most for what we want now. And so the reality really of debt is, and our desire for things, is that it can limit us or keep us from using our resources the way God desires to lead us or the way that He intends. We don't feel like we can do what God is asking because we're dragging around this burden. And so I believe that Proverbs shows us what we should do. And so Proverbs advises us that the wise start with generosity. The wise start with generosity. God gives us wealth, not just to serve our needs, but to serve others and to serve His kingdom. He wants us to be generous, understanding that whatever we have, whether great or small, it all comes from Him and that it all belongs to Him. Right? Because generosity has very little to do with wealth or riches. Generosity is not about how much you give. Generosity is measured by how much you have left over. And that's why we saw Jesus praising the widow when she came to the temple, and she offered just 2 simple copper coins. It was worth essentially nothing, but it was the greatest gift. It was an extreme gift. It was an extreme act of worship because she gave all that she had. It was about what she had left over. It was an act of worship. Proverbs 11:25 says that the generous person will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And I love how the Message version puts this, and I've seen this in so many people's lives that I desire to emulate their generosity. Proverbs 11:24, the Message version says, the world of the generous gets bigger and bigger, or larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. The one who blesses others will be abundantly blessed, and those who help others are helped. Robert Morris said that nothing works selfishness and greed out of your life like giving. I've seen that many times in my own life when God challenges me to give something. It's usually because I have a very poor attachment to this item or thing or security. God says, you need to give that away. It's not healthy for you. Proverbs 22:9, the generous themselves will be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Solomon talking about wealth, talking about what we should do with our wealth. When we act in generosity, we are demonstrating one of God's highest qualities. Anybody with an amen? Anybody see that? When we act in generosity, we're expressing the very nature of Almighty God. God's extravagant generosity towards us compels us to be extravagantly generous towards others. God is generous, church. He's given us life and breath and everything else. God has given us great beauties and wonders in the earth and in the heavens for us to explore and enjoy. And if that wasn't enough, God sent his one and only Son. If it wasn't enough, he sent his one and only Son, the greatest gift that anybody could give. As we celebrated communion, he is generous. And he wants us to use our wealth and our resources as a tool to reach people for him, to show people who he is. How we live as Christ followers demonstrates who God the Father is. And if he's a loving and generous and kind and giving God, we should be a loving, generous, and kind church. We should be a loving, generous, and kind people. People should recognize us for our generosity, extreme generosity. God gives us our resources to show others who he is. So it's time that we put mission over money. It's time we put mission over money, because my life's mission and your life's mission is to make Jesus known. It's to share the good news. It's to take everything that the Lord has given us and use it as a megaphone for the most important thing that ever happened to your life. The day that you went from lost to found, the day that you went from blind to being able to see, to use everything we have, everything we've been given, to let people know about the transforming power of our relationship with Jesus Christ. Everything. If we place mission over money, how we use our wealth is an indication of our trust and the health and wholeness of our heart. Billy Graham said, "Tell me what you think about money, and I'll tell you what you think about God. For these two are closely related, and a man's heart is closer to his wallet than anything else." This is incredible wisdom and truth. Jesus said, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. And so there's something that we really need to reconnect. We need to stop putting these two things apart. We need to put wealth with worship. We need to see our money as part of our mission. We need to see resources as a means of redemption. We need to put evangelism back with economics, that everything we do, all of our wealth, everything is as unto the Lord. Everything is as unto the Lord. Proverbs 19:17 says, if you help the poor, you're lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. Proverbs 22:9, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Let's go back to that generosity. But whoever oppresses the poor insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. Those who are generous to the needy honors him, him being their maker, him being their creator, him being their sustainer. So what an incredible way to honor and recognize God as Lord of your life by serving him with the various blessings he's placed in your hands. And we do it because every good and perfect gift comes down from above. You know, there's nothing more life-giving than getting to share out of your bounty with another person. When you get to share or give or help somebody, I don't know about you, but when we have people in our home, the hospitality, that's the time that you're willing to, open or those cookies that you've been saving for a special occasion. You know, you don't just pull out those fine china things that are just collecting dust, but you pull out the best. You want to give them all that you have. You want to honor them with your resources. We learned really early in our ministry in Calgary, there was a large Spanish congregation there, and they understand this, and you had to be very careful with what you said that you liked. Because if you told them that you liked something, inevitably it would wind up in your hands. We were hosting a conference there, and Danielle just noted to one of the ladies in leadership, she says, "Boy, that's a really nice purse. I really like that purse." Just a compliment. And before the end of the night, the lady had gone over to her seat. She had pulled everything out of her purse, and she marched it over to Danielle, and she said, "I want to bless you with this. I want you to have it." Just the shirt off of their back. Extravagantly generous. This was a blessing to me, and now it's my honor. It's such a privilege to be able to bless you and see you feel so honored that God gave it to me, and now in this way you can see that he's giving it to you. That it's not me giving it to you, it's the Lord giving it to you. It's providing. And you know, this type of action, this extreme generosity, it's so countercultural. It's shocking to people. You mean you would do that? You mean you would lend me that? You would let me borrow that? You would give that to me without expecting anything back? Well, of course. Absolutely. It's not mine. I don't own any of this. I'm just a steward. I'm just a manager. I have temporary possession over the things to which God has trusted me with. And so I have to be diligent in the way that I bless others and use it to tell others about who he is. This has to be our motivation. This has to be our why, to make Jesus known through our wealth and through our excess. The worship team is coming back. We have to see this as our why, because when you lose your why, you lose your way. We don't teach you need to give so that you can get. That you need to bless others so that you will be blessed. Even though God is generous and merciful, and he does that, the motivation is not, well, I want to get. It's not on the back end. I want to receive. I want to be blessed. I want to get. And so I'm giving because it serves me in the end. We give because it serves God. We give because he's blessed us. We give to show who he is. There was a pastor in Atlanta, and he noticed, as he was looking for somewhere to go for dinner, that there was a restaurant called Church of God Grill. He thought this was a very unusual name, so he looked up the phone number and he called it. And on the other end answered a very cheerful man saying, "Hello, Church of God Grill." The pastor said, "I just wonder how you came about this name. It's a very unique name." And the pastor told him, he said, "Well, we had a small mission here, small church, and in order to help with the finances, we started selling chicken after church. And you know, time came that the chicken sales were so good, we actually began to pull back on the church services. We cut back a little on the church service, and eventually we closed the church down to focus solely on selling chicken. But we kept the name as we had originally had it, Church of God Grill." See, when you lose your why, you lose your way. There's so much more to our life, so much more to your life than the acquisition of things, than the managing of things, than the taking care of things, and the maintenance of things, and then inevitably, if you live long enough, the throwing out and discarding of things. Your life is too precious. Your mission is too valuable. The calling that you have is too significant for your life to revolve around wealth and the pursuit of riches. And so instead of pursuing money or wealth, pursue God. Instead of being wise in the things of the world, pursue wisdom that comes from God, which is worth more than money. Proverbs 3:13, "Blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gains understanding, for to gain her is better than the gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. She is far more precious than jewels, than anything you can desire can compare to her." God's wisdom. We said that's God's leading, that's the Holy Spirit speaking to you and ordering your life and directing you in your finances and directing you in your resources, directing you and leading you in where your wealth goes. I love the words of that old chorus, I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather have Jesus than riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or land. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hands. I'd rather, far better. This is what my heart is for you, that you would have passion for Jesus that overwhelms your passion, your pursuit of any other thing in your life. No matter what you find, if you don't eventually find Jesus through your life, the Bible tells us, what would it profit a man to gain the entire world, but to forfeit his own soul? And what could a man give in exchange for his soul? To know Jesus is better than life. And so you may be sitting here this morning and assessing where you are at and where your history has been and the way you've used your wealth or your resources, and realizing there's been times where you've lost your way, that your why has been maybe overshadowed by other things. And today in God's presence, it's an opportunity to seek forgiveness and to ask that from this point on, God would lead you in your finances. God would lead you in your wealth. God would lead you to use wisdom in where he's asking you to be generous. But even greater than that, maybe in these moments you're realizing that you don't have a relationship with God. You haven't made Jesus Lord of your life, and that's the first step in making him Lord over your finances and over your resources. And so today I'd ask if there's anyone who's feeling the calling and pulling of Jesus, asking you to come into a loving relationship with him. That no matter what you have in life, no matter what wealth, no matter what riches, no matter what things come your way, that you have the one thing that is most important in life, and that's a personal relationship with your Lord and Savior. And so before we sing and before we close, I just want to make that invitation to you. Anybody here that says, I just need to receive Jesus today? You can slip your hand up and we can pray for you. Or if you're watching at home, you can text the word life to 587-600-1905. Or if you're here in the building and you just want to talk to a pastor about what it means to follow Jesus and have a relationship with him, it's very simple. We confess our sins. We believe that Jesus died and he rose again, that he's God's one and only Son. And it says when we confess and when we believe, God makes everything new. The old is gone and the new has come. And so today I'm believing that there can be new life for you. New life in your heart, new life in your finances and in your wealth, new life in every area. And that God would continually direct you in a path of wisdom. He would give you more than your daily bread, but he would be the bread of life that sustains you. Can we bow our heads this morning and pray? Father God, we're so thankful that you did not leave us without instruction. God, in every facet, in every area of our lives, you want to lead us. You want us to be Lord. You want us to surrender and lay down our path, our plan, our purpose to your ways, which are higher. Your thoughts that are above our thoughts. Your ways that are above our ways. And so, Father, in this, the stewardship of our wealth and of our resources, Lord, we place before you. We consider it such a blessing and a treasure for all that you've placed in our hands to be good stewards of. Lord, we realize, and maybe even for the first time, that these are things that help us to declare who you are. They're tools and resources to make your name known and your goodness known, your generous nature. Holy Spirit, we ask that you would give us wisdom to identify the deceitfulness of wealth, the ways that it can become a trap and a snare. And God, help us to reconnect our passion and our purpose with all that you've placed in our hands. We know that you're faithful to lead us, Lord. For those that are praying prayers of forgiveness this morning, for those that are praying prayers of recommitment this morning, we just ask that you would make that reality new to them in their heart, that the old is gone and the new has come. You've washed them and you've cleansed them. And we thank you that it's only through your blood, Lord Jesus. We just honor you today, God, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's put our hands together. We can
Thanks
all
for that
stand.
great word, Pastor Joe. Isabella's going to lead us as we make our way up.
You have come, and we have found life everlasting. Now alive to know your freedom, never ending. You alone have made a way for us in your love. You are life. I'm living in the light of my Savior, dancing in the arms of forever. I'm singing like I'm walking on water. You are life alive in me. From grayest skies to living color, you have called us. In your light, your light uncovered the world to see now. You alone have made a way for us in your love. You are life. I'm living in the light of my Savior, dancing in the arms of forever. I'm singing like I'm walking on water. You are life alive in me. I'll give my life to follow, 'cause your love is all I want now. You are life. You are life alive in me.
Let's sing this together for all.
For all the world to find your love, for all the world to see that you are God, forever be lifted high. The one who holds the universe in every beating heart across the earth. Jesus be lifted high. And you are life. I'm living in the light of my Savior, dancing in the arms of forever. I'm singing like I'm walking on water. You are life alive in me. I'll give my life to follow, 'cause your love is all I want now. You are life. You are life alive in me.
Just live in the light of that truth this week. Know that He is life alive inside of us. And great word from Pastor Joe. Just let that soak in. Rewatch it this afternoon or later in the week if you need to. But have a great week. Enjoy the sun, and we'll see you next Sunday.